Hi everyone, I'm Simiso Ndaba. Welcome to another meetup event with Our Ladies Gaborone. With us we have Isabella Velásquez. I don't remember her position at Posit, but I know she is a Posit speaker. Yeah, so this may or may not be the last event for Our Ladies Gaborone this year. If you want to give a talk, just reach out to me and just remember that we follow the code of conduct of Our Ladies Gaborone. So if you see anything that's offensive, just reach out to me or Isabella. And today she'll be talking about, she'll be giving us a gentle introduction into using Positron for us, our users. So I'm not going to take any time. She'll also be telling us how she'd like the talk to go. So welcome, Isabella, and thank you for being here.
Having me. And thank you everybody so much for joining. One second. Oop. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, okay. That's so odd. It said I was muted. And I'm so sorry. My cat is trying to get in. So let me go get her.
Okay, I think she's just sorting out her cat. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here.
I'm so
Okay, that she's back.
sorry.
All
Yeah,
right.
so sorry. My cat is very insistent, and if you try to you know, keep her outside, she really doesn't like that. And so she might jump up and you can see her in a little bit. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, so much for joining. And let me share my screen. All right. And you should be seeing, oh, speaking of my cat, here she is.
Aw.
All right.
Yeah, we
Can
see it.
everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much, Simi, for having me here. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I'm really excited to talk today about Positron for RStudio users, a very gentle introduction. And so a little bit about me, I am on the developer relations team at Posit, formerly RStudio. I've been at Posit for about 4 years, and I've been a long-term member of the R community. I was previously a co-organizer of Our Lady Seattle when I lived in Seattle. I love writing blog posts and giving webinars and participating in Our Lady's events. So thank you again so much for being here with me today. And if you would like to reach out, these are my social media handles. In addition, I have three cats, one of which really wanted to join the presentation just now, and then two other ones. And I just wanted to show you a photo of their very gentle introduction. And my hope is that our introduction to Positron today is better than their introduction to each other a couple of years ago. And so to start off, I have a confession to make. I love RStudio. I have loved it ever since I first learned about it in grad school. And the true story was my grad school was primarily focused on R, and I remember downloading R and trying to work with it. I'm like, why is this so difficult? Like, why can't, I'm typing what I think I'm supposed to be typing and running what I'm supposed to be running. It's just not working for me. And I, messaged my older brother, complaining, and he goes, have you heard of RStudio? And that really changed my workflows, how I thought about R and data analysis, and it, became my go-to IDE for many, many years. And I imagine a lot of you as well are also longtime happy RStudio users. And because it is a fantastic IDE, it's a great workhorse for our users, and it's served us incredibly well for years. But, as our workflows might get more complex, there's so many new technologies out there now. Maybe, your job is requiring you to use a little bit of Python, or you want more customization in your IDE, or something just more modern and integrated. You might start wondering, what's next? And so with that, the folks at RStudio, now Posit, who brought you RStudio, the IDE, have developed something new. called Positron. And so Positron is the next generation IDE built for a modern multi-language data science world. And it has a lot of the familiar tools and features that you love from RStudio, but it's built on a different, more flexible foundation. And so today we're going to take a very gentle tour of Positron. We'll look at the interface, where your favorite RStudio features live in this new world, and see how to get it set up so it feels just like home. And my goal is to show you that moving to Positron isn't a huge leap. It's just a positive step forward. And so with that, let's get with the first steps. And so really, I try to tailor this to the folks who have downloaded Positron, opened it up, and then immediately closed it. Maybe thinking like, oh, not right now. This is not for me in this moment. In terms of the very first step, it's heading to positron.posit.co and then downloading the installer. And so when you click this big download button, it takes you to a place on the Positron website where you can grab the version for your specific operating system. And then running the install is a pretty standard process. It shouldn't be too tricky. And then you click through the prompts like you would for any other application that you have. And one nice quality of life feature that RStudio's users might appreciate is once Positron is installed, Positron automatically updates to the latest version. So you only have to install it a single time. And if, of course, you want a highly managed environment where you prefer to manually control your updates or any other reason, you can turn off the setting, but it is on by default. So you have gone to the positron.posit.co website, you've clicked the download button, you've downloaded Positron and clicked through the steps, and then you click the big icon that says Positron, and this is what your front page should look like. And so uh, there are, you might immediately look at this and be like, oh, this doesn't look like RStudio at all. But do not panic. We will walk through each step of how to get started, uh, as opposed to like focusing too much on the differences. But that being said, there might be something that you notice. It's going to say that it might say there is no session running. Use start session to start one. And so basically what this is saying is Positron is saying, hey, I can use all sorts of languages like R or Python. I can use all sorts of versions of these languages. So you have to tell me which one you want for this particular project. And there are a couple ways, like from this front page, that you can get started. But let's hold off for a bit because we will get back to that in a second. Because the other thing that you might notice when you open Positron is that there are various open folder options. And so there's here on the left hand, there's a button that says open folder because you have not yet opened the folder. And then also inside, the main pane of Positron, there's three options: open folder, and new from Git. And so depending on your context, you would pick the one that works for you. And this has an immediate effect as RStudio in terms of setting the working directory and activating the file explorer. However, if you notice, Positron is a bit more prescriptive about this, whereas in RStudio, you might just open up a new R file and start playing around, and you can kind of save it wherever. Positron does really want you to open up a folder as kind of starting off your workspace. And so my recommendation to you is if you are kind of more like working in ad hoc scripts and files and things like that, to start thinking about your workflow in this kind of more folder-based kind of way. The other thing that I want to mention, as soon as you open up Positron, that you may notice is these walkthroughs and help documentation. And so right from the front page, excuse me, right from the front page, there is going to be resources for you to help you get started if this is very new to you. In particular, one highlighted one is a walkthrough for migrating from RStudio to Positron, which is perfect, right? That's what we're talking about today. And so if you haven't gone through that walkthrough yet, I do recommend you giving it a try so that you can see what exactly the Positron developers want you to notice. Okay, so that being said, uh, Positron really wants us to open a folder. We really want to get started on our work, so we're going to go ahead and do just that. You can navigate over and choose the option that makes sense for you. In this case, we're going to open up a brand new folder. When you click that, it's going to open this dialog where it's going to ask you, what kind of project do you want? And us being RStudio users, we want to do an R project, please. So we can navigate over to the R project. And then when we click that, now it's going to ask me, where do you want to put your new folder? And then here, you give it a name, and you want to give it a very beautiful descriptive name like I have, like my R project. And then you find the directory where you want to save that folder, where it's going to live. So for me, I'm just putting it in my user's Isabella Velásquez location. If you notice, there is an option for initializing a Git repository. So if you have experience with GitHub and you want to start off your folder like that, you can. But I'm going to leave that unchecked for now. And then I'm going to also leave the defaults that it's provided here. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And now it's going to ask me, hey, can you please configure your project? You've already chosen that you want an R project, and then you can select a version of R to launch your project with. And at this point in time, I only had one version of R, so it automatically picked that up. If you notice, there's also configurations for using renv, which is a way of managing R package version from your IDE. And so you can click that if you want to start your project off using renv. If not, you can leave it unchecked. And then I'm going to click Create. And then final thing, it's going to say, okay, done. This folder has been created. It's been created in that directory that I specified earlier. Do you want to open it in the current window or a new window? So completely up to your preference, but I'm going to go ahead and click New Window. And now here it is. I have created a folder that's serving as my workspace for this project. And when Positron first opens up, this is what it looks like. And so there are like a lot of like panes that we're going to go through in a second. But again, I want to note, for some reason, my positron did not pick up that I wanted that specific R session. And so if you see this, you have a few options. Again, you can click that link in the console. You could click the start session up top. And doing so gives me a list of all the interpreters. So I have both R and Python installed on my computer, which is why you see more than one. If you only have one version of R installed on your computer, you'll only see one option here. And so again, I want to, interpreter basically just means pick your programming language. And so here I'm going to pick R as my interpreter, as my programming language, so I can navigate over. Or if you would prefer using your keyboard, you can hit the down button and then select the one that you want and then click enter, or you can click on it like this. Now it's slightly different at the top right, where before it said start a session. Now it gives me R 4.4.2. So I know, hey, that the correct programming language and version have been selected and it's running. Positron has picked it up. And now in the console, it also has that very familiar message to RStudio users, letting you know R is a free software and comes with absolutely no warranty and so on. And so with this, now I have my folder serving as a workspace. I have R selected as my programming language, and now I can get started. But real quick, I want to mention one more thing. So there's something called key bindings or keyboard shortcuts. And if you are an RStudio user, Shortcuts really help with productivity. You don't have to break your coding flow to reach for a mouse, and you have like that muscle memory, right? Hitting Command Enter to run a code or using Command Shift M to create a pipe or anything like that. And so the good news is when you transition to Positron, you can keep that muscle memory. There are a lot of shortcuts that work immediately. The Posit team knew that you would probably want that first, so they've baked in a lot of the common ones right out of the box. But if a shortcut doesn't work, don't worry. Positron has its own list of keyboard shortcuts. And so my recommendation to you, if you haven't worked with Positron before, is set up your key bindings right away. So that way you can get started and not wonder like, oh, why, are my commands not working? And to do that, you go back to the Positron website, and there is a page called RStudio Key Bindings. And then again, it will kind of specify which key bindings come out of the box with Positron. But then it also mentions, that you can enable a large section of, or large set of them using a setting. And so to enable this setting, you navigate over to this link. When you click it, it automatically brings you back to Positron and the exact place where you're supposed to enable this setting. And so if you can see here, it says Workbench Key Bindings, RStudio Key Bindings, and then there's a checkbox for Enable RStudio Key Bindings. And so you can click here and then click. And then if you notice, it says Require Restart. So you might be wondering, how do I restart Positron? We'll get back to that in a second. But that's what you would do if you want to enable those common key bindings, because those key bindings are absolutely amazing. If you use Command Shift M for creating pipes, it is hard to work without it, I guess I should say. Okay, so to briefly recap, we have our folder, we have our interpreter, which is our programming language version 4.4.2 enabled and active. Now I have my keyboard shortcuts that are very helpful for me as an RStudio user. Let's explore Positron's layout. And the layout is meant to be very flexible and tailored to your needs. You, like RStudio, are working in different kind of panes. But the Positron's UI, while it should feel very familiar to RStudio users, there are a few changes. So let's take a very high level side-by-side view of the two IDEs and then see where they contrast and what are important things to know about if you are coming from RStudio and have, say, never used VS Code or Positron before. So here is RStudio. And again, at the very high level, we have a section where we're writing our code, right? Our R script, our QMD file, our markdown file, and so on. Excuse me. Down below, we have the console where we run our code. So we'll say, installing a package and just needing a very temporal way of running code, as well as our terminal, which lets us access things through the command line. And then background jobs, say you're rendering a Quarto document and you can see what exactly is going on in the background. And then very generally on the right side by default is kind of your understand section. So where you can see the data that you are working with and find out more details about them, your plots and so on. So Positron is by default set up very similarly. Again, you want to write in a similar sort of editor as you have in RStudio. You want to run in the console and the terminal and so on in like this pane towards the bottom. And then by default on your right side is everything for understanding your work. And so hopefully this helps illustrate that in terms of kind of layout, it should be very familiar and essentially like have the same functions for each corresponding pane. But you might notice when you first opened Positron, it actually looked a tiny bit different because it had this section on the left side that doesn't exist in RStudio. So I would say these are probably two of the UI elements that are most novel for RStudio users. On the left side, you have the activity bar, which provides access to different functional capabilities of Positron. And whatever you click on the activity bar switches what appears in the primary sidebar, which is the sidebar to the right of it. So again, the activity bar is quick access to switch between core views, and the primary sidebar is going to show you different views depending on what you have chosen in the activity bar. So by default, the first icon is clicked, and that is your Explorer icon. And so the Explorer icon uh, is open and it will show you the File Explorer to navigate to your project directory and the outline. And so as a close-up, this is what it would look like if, say, I had more files in my project than what I do right now. And so it has collapsible lists where I can open and close. And there are also functionality within the Explorer. So for example, creating a new file, deleting a file, renaming a file, I can do that through the Explorer, which is open if I click these double document icons on the left. The next icon down is going to be search. And so this allows you to search through your files for a particular term or name or so on. If you notice, it also allows you to replace, if there's a particular term that you want to find and replace, you could do that as well. If you click on the next icon, that's going to be your Git icon. And so if you have not used Git before, it's a version control system that tracks changes to your code and also helps you collaborate with other and maintain a history of your project. And so Positron has built-in Git integration that works with Git repositories, but you must first have Git installed on your computer to use Git in Positron. There are instructions on how to do that on the Positron website. And then if you recall from when we first opened up Positron, there were a few options that already told us, hey, if you use Git, come try this. First thing is that you can open a folder to an existing Git repository. When you click the new folder, it asks, do you want to initialize this from Git? And you can also clone an existing GitHub repository Git repository from a source like GitHub. And so if you are working within an existing project that currently doesn't have Git enabled, like I do here, I already have Git installed, you can initialize it through this by clicking this icon in the activity bar and clicking Initialize Repository. The next section is debug. So this is for debugging code. The next section is extensions. And so this is also something that's pretty different from RStudio. Positron is built on code OSS, which is the open source core of VS Code. And you can use what are called VS Code extensions in Positron. And so this extensions view allows you to search through existing extensions and install and manage them as well. One thing to note is that there are extensions that exist that are not available in Positron. Most of the time, it's because it is an extension that is proprietary to VS Code. And so they, say Microsoft does not allow you to install their proprietary extensions on things that are not directly their VS Code. But you can always search through the extensions and see what's available, and there are many, many available through this open marketplace of extensions. One thing to note is downloading an extension is like downloading a program. You want to be careful about who you're downloading from and what you are installing. So just keeping that in mind, you could do things like, for example, if it says Posit software, it's probably very well vetted and good to download. You can see how many times it's been downloaded and so on. And so Yeah, and so you also want to make sure that the extension is up to date. If it's super, super old, you might want to try to find an alternative as well. And we'll get back to extensions in a sec. Positron, so the next icon down is this screen. And then if you click that, you see the remote SSH view. And so Positron has remote for remote SSH sessions. And so clicking here can help you configure that. The next section is particularly for all of you who write packages or things like that, is this little beaker, and it signifies the testing view. And from here, you can, if you are working on an R package, you can run tests and so on from this view. The next icon down is a Posit Publisher, which allows you to publish to Posit Connect and Posit Connect Cloud if you have, say, a Shiny app that you want to share with the world, and you can configure that here. This is also an extension that is on the marketplace. So if you're working in VS Code and want this, that's available there as well. Next is GitHub, so specifically how to work in GitHub with Positron. And then the last icon is Positron Assistant, which is an integrated AI client for working with your data and your code directly within Positron. Okay, so that was the whole left side of the screen in the activity bar. And so one final note on the layout is, there are panes, they're very, very flexible and you could drag them around, you can rearrange them, you can, move the help pane to the session pane if you prefer it there, things like that. If you ever get lost, there are these icons on the top right. And so that will help you configure different views. And in particular, this one on the far left, if you click it, will open up these options. And if at some point you're like, I have no idea what I just did with all of my panes, I just want to get back to normal. If you click that stacked layout one at the top, that will reset your pane to the default view where it very, very much mirrors RStudio. And speaking of that, so right in the center is your editor where you're going to write your code. And so it's going to be very, very similar to RStudio. And similarly, the console, here I have written the code, I've saved my file, and now since I've saved my file, it's available in the File Explorer on the left. And any code that I run is going to show up in the console down below. Again, very similar to the default view of RStudio. In terms of writing R code, it should feel quite familiar to RStudio users. Once you have those key bindings and everything installed, you can run, sections of your code by running and lines of your code by running Command Enter. And again, doing one line, a few lines, or the whole script, highlighting the whole script and running that will populate it in your console so you can see what exactly has been run, but very, very similar. If you want to run your whole script all at once, just like in RStudio, you can run Command-Shift-Enter. It will run your whole thing. One thing that is a little bit different is whereas in RStudio, if you wanted to run your whole script by clicking a button, you would hit this Run button on the top right of your editor. In Positron, it's going to be that Play button that's on the left. And so just looks a little bit different, but essentially the same exact function. If you need help in Positron, it is very similar to RStudio again. If you run question mark, and then the name of your function, it's going to populate in the help pane on the right, just like in RStudio. And so you can see that it looks very, very similar. Alternatively, in Positron, you can hit F1 and then click on the name of the function that you want help with, and that will also open up the help pane. Okay, so going back, now we have run our code in the editor in the center, and now we can see that some things have been populated on the right. In particular, let's check that out. And so in terms of exploring data, this looks very similar to where you run your code in RStudio. If you import an object, you'll see it in the top right. And just like that, in our Positron, you will also see it in the top right. But there are a few changes that and additions that I want to mention. So exploring data. So again, this should look very familiar in terms of we have run our script. There is a data set called Lincoln weather that was in that script and read in and therefore populated in our sessions pane. And if I am in Positron and I click this arrow, and it will uncollapse that. And so I can see a little bit more detail about that data set. I can see the names of the columns, a few of the first values, and the type of data. So, the CST is a string and so on. But let's say I want an even more comprehensive view of this, or I want to see if in RStudio you ever run view and the name of your data set, it opens up a new window with, a spreadsheet-like view of that data. So in Positron, you can do the same thing. So you highlight where it's highlighted. This is going to open up what is called the Data Explorer, which is code first, exploration of data, very visual. So you don't have to immediately jump into your code. You can kind of see what exactly is contained in your data set. If you navigate over and click that, now it's going to open up a new tab in that center pane. And this is called the Data Explorer. And it's really supposed to mean to give you like a way of exploring your data very, very easily and quickly before you get started with your code. And so now that that it's open, here is the whole Data Explorer. And right now we're going to click this icon. And what that's going to do is open up the data grid, which is this section right here. So again, in RStudio, when you run view and the name of a data set, it opens up a spreadsheet-like view. And similarly, in Positron, you can also run view and get the same view, or you can run through the steps where you click the spreadsheet icon, it opens up the Data Explorer, and then you can expand your data grid. And so this is meant to be the primary display, and cell-by-cell view, kind of similar to Excel. And it's also intended to scale very efficiently, so up to millions of rows or columns. And so the first thing to mention is the header, the column header, which has the column name above the data type. And so another view of like, is this an integer, is this a Boolean, and so on. And that will pick it up depending on your data set. If you hit these three buttons for each of the columns, then you have a few options. Clicking that, I can then now see I can copy the column, I can sort the columns. So if you want to see very quickly, oh, like, what are alphabetize something or what's the first county or state or something like that in your data set, you can also sort descending and so on. And if you have changed anything, we'll talk about filters in a second. You can always clear the column selection there and get restarted here. And again, one thing to note is that this is meant to be temporary. Like everything that you do here is really just for exploration and isn't going to edit your data set in any way. It's just meant for you to get started and jump in. So zooming back out, we have, oops, it went away really fast, but to the left of the data grid is the summary panel. And the summary panel provides summary statistics for each column in a data set. To zoom in, here we go. This is what it looks like for this data set. It has a list of all the column names. It has an icon that represents the data type. Each column will also have a histogram or frequency table of the data. And if you hover over this, it will also give you more insight in terms of like the distribution and things like that. To the right of that is a missing data column, which is shown as a little graph with a percentage. So you can quickly see what percentage of the data is missing. And then if you click on one of the arrows next to the column name and open that up, you can see yet another view of the column and its information. Not sure what happened to my slide, but essentially you can, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the last thing I want to mention is the filter bar. Oh, I think I see what happens. And so it's not going to highlight, it is that plus sign above the summary panel. And just zooming in, this is what it looks like. And from here, if you click that plus, you can apply filters to your data set. Again, it's going to be temporary. It's not going to actually change anything. But then you can do things like, if you're very curious about a particular column, things like that, you can click it, select the column you're interested in. Say, I want max temperature greater than 72 degrees just to see, what does my distribution look like when it applies this filter, and apply filter. And now you can see everything has changed because it's applied this temporary filter up above. And from here, I can again clear the column sorting. But something I wanted to mention is in the latest version of Positron, there's also going to be an option for you to save whatever you do in the Data Explorer as code. And so if you do actually want to run these filters on your actual data set, it's going to provide the R code for you to copy and then put in a script so that you can do that. And so all the things that you did here are, you don't have to recreate in code. It will help you do that, which I think will be really, really awesome. And so definitely keep an eye out for the next release. Okay, so zooming back out, we have run some code. We've taken a look at the variable pane. We've looked at the data explorer. One really brief mention I want to mention is the connections pane, which is also up here on the right. And so if you're working a lot with databases, then you would click this pane and connect with them. So for a really like intuitive, easy view. But for now, mostly just wanted to point that out that just like in RStudio, it exists here as well. Let's quickly talk about viewing plots. And this is another feature that working from RStudio, you may have come to kind of expect. Not all IDEs do this, so it's very, very cool that we are able to see our plots, so easily within our editor. And so when you run code that populates a plot, it'll show up by default on that lower right. Here's a zoom in version of it. And so very similar to RStudio, you'll be able to save, you'll be able to copy the plot. If you want to check out different sizes or anything like that, you can hit clip fit. This circle icon actually allows you to apply a dark mode. So if you want a version of your same plots, but with a dark background and corresponding colors, you can use this. If you run multiple plots, you get the plot history. And so you can scroll backward through plots and see how things have changed over time. You can also click through this history film and see, like how did this plot compare to this plot and which one you prefer and so on. And if you want to clear all of your history and start afresh, you can click this button. All right, so now let's zoom back it out. So we are, say, just about done with this script. We have, what we want. It created, we analyzed the data. We took a look at it through the Data Explorer. We created some really nice plots. So I want to create a brand new script. And you have a few ways of doing that. And one way is clicking this new button on the top left, and it's going to say, oh, hey, you want a new file? And you're really like, yes, please. And doing that, it's going to give you the option of clicking a new file. But instead of doing that, I'm going to suggest one of the really different and very important parts of Positron that comes from VS Code that RStudio users may not be super familiar with, which is the command palette. And the command palette is a text-driven interface that allows you to access almost any action that's possible in Positron. Again, this is inherited from VS Code and allows you to work in Positron and run commands without taking your hands off the keyboard. And really, it's kind of like a search bar for functionality. To access the command palette, you run Command Shift P, and then it will populate. And so again, Positron leans very heavily on the command palette. And so if this isn't part of your daily routine, I highly recommend it. So anytime you're thinking, I want to do X in Positron, try making the command palette your first stop. When you run Command Shift P, it's going to open up this drop down and you will know that you're in the command palette because the first uh, character is going to be this caret. If the caret is not there, then you're not in the command palette. And if you're up there and there is no caret, you can also type it in and then access the command palette, or you can hit Command Shift P. From here, you can scroll down to the selection that you want. You can also click it if you would like, but it's probably easier to scroll down. Here's a zoomed in version of, like, for example, the ones that I most recently use. The ones that you most recently use are going to populate at the top. And earlier I mentioned the question, how do I restart Positron? You can restart Positron by going to the command palette and searching for developer reload window. A few other things. So if you want to really quickly see what's available for R, for example, you can start off by typing R and then colon, and then that will let you know, oh, to create a new R file, it's R colon new R file. You can click it or navigate to it. And then that way it creates a new R file without you having to click file, new file. And essentially that will open up the command palette too. So it's really just a shortcut to get here. And essentially, if you're ever missing a button and Positron cannot find it, first step to try is the command palette. Okay, so I hope that was a good introduction of getting started, getting oriented to the different panes of Positron, and then also the command palette, which is going to be a really good friend to you in Positron. In terms of a few example projects, just to compare and contrast with RStudio, for Shiny, it's going to be very similar. So Shiny allows you to create interactive web apps using just R. You don't need to know HTML and CSS. It's a very powerful framework for creating dashboards where people can manipulate data and really gain insights. And so one key difference when working with Shiny and running Shiny in R and Positron is, again, how do you exactly run that app? So whereas in RStudio, there's a Run App button, in Positron, the equivalent is this play button. When you run the Shiny code, it will populate in your viewer in both places, in both RStudio and Positron. And both of them also have the option of popping out the window so that you can see it in your browser. So it's a little bit easier if you would like. The next tool that I want to talk about is Quarto, which is an open source scientific and technical publishing system. It allows you to mix code and text and the code output in a single document and then render it to a whole bunch of different formats. If you are familiar with RStudio, Quarto is called the next generation RStudio. It's inherently multilingual, comes with a bunch of things out of the box, so you don't have to learn different syntax and so on. And Quarto comes bundled with Positron, so you don't have to do anything in order to start using Quarto if you have downloaded Positron. And, of course, because they're developed by the same team, well, not the same team, the same company, they're meant to work really in conjunction with each other through like rich UI and the ability to really use the features of Quarto in Positron and vice versa. In terms of what it looks like, so here I have created a QMD file, which is a Quarto document in both RStudio and Positron. They're going to look very similar. Again, one of the big differences is how to actually see your file in the viewer pane. So whereas in RStudio, you would hit render and it would populate in your viewer pane or in your browser, depending on your default settings. In Positron, you want to hit this preview button. The render on save is exactly the same. You check this off, and anytime you save, that preview will re-render. And both Positron and RStudio have the option for source view, which allows you to see it like you do here, where markdown is markdown text and the code is code, or visual, which is kind of more like a word-like way of writing your Quarto documents. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. And then the last thing is running cells is a little bit different, but hopefully easier to see. So, I don't know why it clicks away. But to run cells, you can either hit the play button in RStudio within the chunk, but in Positron, it's right above the chunk on the left, and it says run cell. And so you can do that, and it would be the equivalent sort of function. And when you render your Quarto document, preview it, both times they're going to show up in this viewer pane in both RStudio and Positron. In the command palette, just like with R, if you want to see all the things that are available for Quarto, you can start, the caret, Quarto, colon, and then see all the options available for Quarto. And in particular, I wanted to note the Quarto preview format, which allows you to preview your document in different formats. So if you are writing an HTML file, but you're like, hey, what would this look like as a Reveal.js presentation? You can do that directly by clicking Quarto preview format. There are a few features that are unique to Positron and not available in RStudio. One thing is multiple R versions. And so earlier I only had one version of R, but say I'm going to install the latest version, which is 4.5.1 finally. And when I do that, Positron picks it up. And when I hit, select the interpreter, it's going to give me the option for both of them. And so you can very easily switch between the different versions of R depending on your project's needs. And so for my recommendation for installing different versions of R is using a tool called Rig. It makes it very easy to install different versions, delete versions that you don't need anymore, and really helps manage your different R versions. The next thing that's different that's available in Positron is multiple sessions. So you can switch between multiple R and Python interpreter sessions. And so you can switch between them. You can have multiple going, there will always be one active one, but you could have multiple available to you at any one time. And you can see that here. There are a couple of ways. If you click that button on the top right, you can switch between interpreters there, and you can see which ones I'm currently running in the lower, kind of in the middle, in the console pane. There's always going to be one that's designated as the active interpreter session, but if I click the other one, that one will become the active one. And so you can always create new sessions, delete sessions, rename sessions, everything like that from this view. Probably one of the biggest things is folks asking about using folders instead of our projects. Our projects are something very core to RStudio users. But essentially, I and the Positron team just want to encourage you that essentially they're not super, super different, and that there's nothing beyond the R project file that opens when you open up an R project that is really going to be fundamentally different. And so if you want to learn more, Jenny Bryan talked more about it in the PositConf 2024 talk, introducing Positron, but essentially Workspace is a core concept in Positron. Workspace is just a folder. It's very similar to a project in RStudio. And their tip is to work in a folder almost all of the time. Positron has built-in AI, completely like integrated within AI. Positron Assistant, which is available in that activity bar. If you hit the icon of the little robot, is a client that brings together LLM integration within Positron for chat and inline completions. And then there is an extension called DataBot, which you can install separately, which is very, very experimental, but it's meant to help you with exploratory data analysis in Positron. So, Positron Assistant can help you do things like add a new theme to your plot and things like that. DataBot is more for exploratory purposes. Other thing that's a little bit different is the Git tab, which is inherited from VS Code. And I have to admit, I know very little about this because I love RStudio's Git pane. And so I have found it hard to switch. And so usually if I'm on Positron, I use the command line. But that being said, the Git pane in Positron is extremely powerful, very visually, visually appealing. It gives you a lot of information through color and things like that. You can run way more commands in it than you can in RStudio. And so if that is something that interests you, you can try it out. Some features unique to RStudio. So if there are some shortcuts that you try and cannot get them to work, there are some that are not yet available. And this is a GitHub issue tracking the changes. So for example, Command Alt B runs the code up to to where your cursor is, not yet available. The import dataset widget. So if you use that a lot, there's also an issue on that, but it's not yet available. That being said, I did want to mention you can copy and paste a CSV right into Positron, like literally copy it from your desktop and then paste it into Positron. Not exactly the same as import dataset widget, but a new functionality. Probably one of the most upvoted issues is inline output in Quarto documents and or Markdown documents. That is not yet available in Positron. There's also an issue open for it. If this is something you absolutely love, unfortunately, it will be missing. RStudio add-ins. So, if you install these and use these in RStudio, also not available. Saving and reloading your workspace state. So every time you open up Positron and your R project, it's going to be empty in the data viewer and everything like that. And so those are just some things to know. And my last little bit that I want to mention is you can really customize Positron, and this is one of the things that is, held up as one of the really positive attributes of it. Through extensions, which is available through that icon on the left-hand side. My suggestion to you is to install the Positron Plus 1E extension by Garrick and Bowie. And it has things like an extension that helps you work with Shiny. So for example, like debugging Shiny apps. Air, which is an R language formatter. So it's extremely fast way of, if your parentheses are all over the place and things like that, it can help you like format your code. And when you install the extension or this extension pack, then you will have Air available to you to format your code. Extensions are also how you get new themes in Positron. And so in the command palette, if you type theme and go to preference color theme, you can see the built-in themes that are available in Positron. But that being said, you can also create your own theme. There are a lot of things to switch, but if you are here, click extensions, and then you search for a particular theme. I just wanted to call out, my brother and I worked on Tomorrow Night Bright, which is a theme that is available in RStudio and not available in Positron. And if you would like to use it, you can search for it in the extensions, click on it, and then go ahead and install, and that will be available in that list for you to install different extensions if that's what you prefer your IDE to look like. And then finally, Positron doesn't come with the R package manager that you might be used to in RStudio. with the list of package and the version and things like that, but there is an extension that replicates that. Just to wrap up, there are more ways of really customizing Positron. Opening up the command palette and running open keyboard shortcuts allows you to create keyboard shortcuts. So for example, here, if you put this in your JSON file, it will allow you to create a reproducible example once you run this keyboard shortcut. So you can really start adding all sorts of things that you really want, to be able to do in your keyboard. You can also edit your user settings. And so Command Shift P, the command palette, and then you open up the user settings. So these two examples, the first one makes it so that that AIR formatter that I just talked about will format every time you save the file, and if you set it to true. Another one is, you may have noticed in my Quarto document, the cells are a different color. And so that's by enabling this user setting by setting use theme. In the Positron, what you can do is you can edit settings like keyboards and user settings through JSON, which is a format of file typed out like this, kind of nested and things like that. But if you open up, you can also view it another way, so you don't have to type the letters by running open user settings. And then if you search for extensions R within your user settings in this kind of interface, you can see all the things that are available to you there for R. For example, if you want to switch between the migritter and the native pipe when you hit Command Shift M. The layout, as I mentioned earlier, is very customizable. So in this case, like let's say I don't like my file viewer on the left, I can just drag and drop it to the right. So if you want to replicate more in RStudio. Very last thing I want to mention is we have a Posit Data Science community Discord. I'm happy to share a link. And the Positron team, checks it out. If you have any questions, if you want to learn more, you can click it. And, here is Julia Silgi showing off that convert to code feature and so on. And we'd love to see you there. And with that, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, Isabella. I think if you go through the chat, you have a couple of questions. Um,
Yeah.
Eric, if you're here, could you ask your question? You can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Isabella what she wanted to know about key bindings.
Okay. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for a wonderful presentation.
Oh,
I missed the steps in the key binding, how to activate the key binding. So if you can quickly go.
yeah, absolutely. Let me open up. Okay, sorry, I was just looking through the different questions. Can you see my positron?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. So if I hit Command Shift P, this opens up my command palette, and then I can look up like open, I think it's keyboard shortcuts. And sorry, there's something in Zoom that's covering me. Okay, there we go. And so you can see the options here. If you want like kind of a visual look of your keyboard shortcuts, you could click here. But for more customization, you would hit the JSON one. And so this one would open up this keybindings.json file. And here you would place any of your custom key bindings. So for example, here I have something that, oh yes, this is using Gander, which is an AI helper package from Posit. And I could run it and like you could kind of read through it and see what exactly it's saying. If Control Command G would open up this this Gander add-in for me. And so then you would hit save, maybe reload by, for good measure, reload window. And then you will have that key binding enabled.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks for making that clear, Isabella. Ray, are you there? Okay, no, he was saying that he's clear on the terminal. Eric, do you have a question? Oh, he was asking if you could share the data with them so that they could follow the recording.
Oh, yes, yes. So the data that you saw here is actually packaged in the GG Ridges package, but I'm happy to share the code and everything like that. And I will also pass over the slides and everything like that.
Sure, can you share the screen slides and mhm. Do you see any more questions, Isabella, that I'm missing?
Yeah, I saw one on there's a render website button. And so essentially, I don't have a Cordo website right now. This is just a single QMD file. But this preview is pretty equivalent to render in RStudio. Even if it's a website, it should work. And clicking that, uh, yes, we'll run it, I hope. Oh, yes. One thing to note, if you're using Quarto in and then R snippets, then or like R code, you also have to install a few other packages. But I don't know. Oh, it's because there we go. I hadn't selected an interpreter. And so it didn't know what programming language to use. Okay, and it's not available for 4.5, so I can go ahead and then switch over to 4.4.2. It's too new, I guess. There we go. Uh, so you can do that. Quarter is also a command line interface. And so if you want like more specific ways of rendering Quarto, we didn't talk too much about the terminal, but it's available here in the middle lower part of Positron. And from here, you can do things like run Quarto, preview, the name of your file, or Quarto render the name of your project and things like that, and then run it that way as well.
Mhm. Blanca, if you're there, do you want to ask your question about
Yes,
positron system? Mhm.
yes, I just wanted to know if the AI helpers are free.
Yeah, so Positron Assistant and Databot currently support Anthropic Claude, or sorry, Anthropic, and then GitHub Copilot for code completion. And then in the next release, it would also support GitHub Copilot for chat. Currently, those two are free, or I'm sorry, are paid, but the Posit team is exploring how to integrate free models. So whereas you can install Positron Assistant, the actual models that you're using cost money.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I did not know that about positron assisted and databot. Ricardo, if you're there, could you also ask your question? And anyone else, not just people who asked before in the chat. Ricardo?
Okay, hello.
Hello.
My question was about Copilot, but I think Isabella has answered it. It works with Positron, so it's okay. I understood that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Ricardo. And Ray, did Ray ask his question before? Ray, are you there?
Yeah, so I think your question
Uh-huh.
might be, did the inline uh, the inline running of plots and things like that. So if you notice, I'm here in a Quarto document. If I hit run cell, it will populate here in the plots viewer. Right now, the option, like you would in RStudio, of seeing it inline is not yet available.
Um, Mugwanya, Richard, are you there? Could you maybe elaborate on your statement, Mr. Richard? So you,
Yes, Lord.
Hi.
all right.
All right. Thank you so much, Isabella, for this wonderful presentation. But this is my first time to be on this platform and even to attend this class. And I'm so grateful about this. Actually, I'm a statistician actually in Uganda. And the fact that it is my first time, I really didn't know about all the things that Isabella has presented. Actually, I'm really very fascinated about this presentation. It's really wow. Just that my question was one. I'm saying I thought understand exactly in a way that is this specifically for developers, or it can as well be done by data managers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And yes, that's a great question. I did definitely, orient this presentation to folks who have used RStudio before, but essentially, I believe like the idea behind RStudio and Positron is the ability for anybody who works with data to do what they need to do in like an intuitive, unified place. And so oftentimes, if it's an editor not meant for data science specifically, you have to use multiple tools, things like you have to have the command, or I'm sorry, the terminal open, you need to have the editor open, maybe your files open somewhere else. And this is supposed to really bring in everything together for the purpose of working with data. And so I hope some of the things that I showed kind of highlighted this. Again, like the ability of reading in your having a place, an editor to put in your code, run it, and then see an option for like looking at your data very quickly to see like what is this all about, presenting kind of different views and like being able to explore very quickly to find any highlights, any patterns and things like that, and then returning to your script to do something more thorough, something reproducible, and everything like that. When you have to move on to presentation, being able to use something like Quarto, where if you see the preview here, if I run it, so like you can see your report. Again, in a single place, you don't have to like, move around. Oh my goodness, I don't know what's wrong. And things like that. And so that's really the purpose of this tool, that you don't have to jump around, you don't have to copy and paste, you can do just everything all unified.
Thank you so much. I've noted that. Thank you so much, Isabella.
Thank you.
Yeah, Isabella, we can't thank you enough. I mean, I think I'm going to be watching this recording over and over again. It's really inspired me to use Positron. Do we have any other questions, comments? If you remembered anything after the talk, you can go ahead and send. How do I send this? You can go ahead and send an email to gaborone@allladies.org, or Isabella, if you're comfortable sharing your contacts, if people want a one-on-one tutorial with you, if they have any
Yeah.
questions that they want to ask.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Here's a presentation, and then it also has my social links and everything like that. And
mhm.
I hope that you enjoy it. And thank you so much for having me. And I hope to see
Ooh,
everybody again.
really nice. Thank you for sharing that. And for
Yeah.
everyone who is watching on YouTube, I'm glad that you're watching on YouTube, and the recording will be uploaded by tomorrow. So tomorrow it should be there and you can watch it again and again. And thank you so much again, Isabella. And I hope I'll see you next year in Houston.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Maybe just stop the recording.